Greetings, fellow humans. My name is Alistair Lord and I am the Renaissance Yorkshireman. Today I'd like to make a video which is essentially an addendum video or a footnote video to the video that I made yesterday about creative visualizations. And really what I want to do is just talk a little bit about some exceptions to the visualization process, and also a little bit about sports science and how they use visualizations and how this is a very, in many respects, ordinary thing. And I'm really emphasizing that this is not woo-woo kind of stuff. Just to recap from yesterday, there are three ways we can do a creative visualization. There is the visual aspect. So you have your eyes closed and you're seeing something in your mind's eye. You're seeing some kind of picture or some kind of story, almost like a film that you're running in your head. So that's the visualization aspect. Second, there's the narrative aspect. So the narrative aspect, either you have some kind of affirmation in English or whatever your first language is, or you're using some kind of mantra in Hindi or Pali or some other language from India, or you're telling yourself an extended story. And it doesn't really matter whether it's an affirmation or whether it's an extended story. The principle is still the same. And the third aspect is the feeling. So you're trying to generate some kind of positive emotion. So love, completion, satisfaction, something like that. But it's not, you might be drawing on your memory, but really what you're doing is you're recreating the feeling in the moment. So you're experiencing it as if it's happening now. So what are these exceptions to these three aspects? Well, there's a condition in the world called aphasia. Now, people who have this condition, and they're only approximately 1 in 100 of the population, as far as I'm aware, they have no ability to make a picture in their mind. They have no mind's eye. So for those people who have this condition of aphasia, they're not capable of using the visualization aspect of creative visualizations. So if they were to use this form of meditation, they would only be able to use the narrative and the feeling aspect. The second exception to the process of creative visualization, which I described yesterday, is a group of people who have no inner monologue. Now, I don't know what the name of this condition is. I've watched some YouTube videos on it, but nobody actually gives a name to this condition. They just talk about having no inner monologue. So these people, and again, they're about 1 in 100 of the population, apparently, they're not having a dialogue or a monologue as they're walking along or cycling along or doing what it is that they do in their day-to-day thing. They're just not, they don't have this conversation or monologue going on in their head. So these people are incapable of doing the narrative aspect of creative visualizations. So in their case, they would have to use the visual aspect and the feeling aspect. And finally, there's a group of people who don't have feelings in the sense that most people do. And these people are called psychopaths. And they don't experience emotions in the same way that most of us do. Now, there is an awful lot of research about psychopaths and the way that they can imitate emotion, but they don't experience it in the same way that most people do. Or perhaps they experience certain negative emotions, such as anger and hatred, but they don't experience the positive emotions like love, for example, that most people do. So those people, again, estimates vary. If you read some references, it'll say approximately 1 in 70. If you read others, it will say 1 in 100. So let's say 1 in 100. So again, 1% of the population, and they are incapable of doing the feeling aspect of of creative visualizations. So if we consider that 1 in 100 have aphasia and don't have the mind's eye aspect, approximately 1 in 100 people don't have an inner dialogue and therefore can't do the narrative aspect of it, that approximately 1 in 100 are psychopaths and are incapable of doing the emotional feeling aspect of it, then it stands to reason that approximately 1 in a million people have all 3 of these conditions occurring at the same time. They have no mind's eye, they have no inner monologue, and they have no feelings. Now, how those people would do this meditation, I have no idea. I'm assuming that they wouldn't be able to do it at all, but I don't know. Because quite simply, as far as I'm aware, there is no research on people who have all 3 of these conditions at the same time. And the second thing that I want to talk about today is related to sports science. So if we think about a sportsman, so let's say Harry Kane, for example, who sometimes, as part of his job as a professional footballer, has to take penalties. Now, Harry Kane practices penalties. In addition to physically practicing the penalties, actually running up and taking them and kicking them into the goal, he's also practicing it in the visual aspect. At the very minimum, he may also be doing the narrative aspect and the feeling aspect, although I suspect with something like taking penalties, the narrative aspect is not very useful. The feeling aspect might be the feeling of completion, the happiness that you feel once the goal goes in. But in general, with that kind of visualization, the visual aspect will be most important. And this is absolutely bog standard in sports science these days. So any professional footballer, for example, and we could give it examples from other sports, but let's stick with football. Any professional footballer who's going to be taking penalties on a reasonably regular basis will be doing the visualization aspect in addition to practicing physically taking penalties. Because as far as I'm aware, the evidence indicates that those people who physically practice and mentally practice with visualizations are more successful than those who only use visualization and those that only use physical practices. So the point I'm getting at here is that it's absolutely normal in many walks of life. It is absolutely not woo-woo. It's not pulling things out of the air. It's not Harry Potter, I've just pulled something from another dimension kind of stuff. It is absolutely normal. Thank you for giving me your time today. Peace.